Hey there, welcome to FarmCraft. We are going to do a teardown of a water heater. This was in my house and it started leaking out the bottom, so I'm going to pull it apart, see what happened to it. There's a couple interesting things about how a water heater works. We'll go through that. Kind of do an autopsy on a water heater. Here it's 240 volt. It's got two elements, upper and lower. They're both 4,500 watts. And the maximum power output is 4,500 watts. That seems kind of odd. Not really. So one interesting thing about a water heater, see, this is the one element and this is the other. So this upper element is 4,500 watts and it's heating basically from here up. It's heating about the top half, because some of that heat is going to travel down. But this element is not capable of heating the water all the way down here. The way these things work is it only runs one element at a time. When the water up here is cold, this element is going to be on until this gets up to temperature. And then this one will turn off and this one will turn on and heat the rest of the tank. The reason for that is because it's a 4,500 watt appliance, but they want to give you hot water as soon as possible. So if this was just a 2,250 watt element and this was a 2,250 element, they could run both at the same time, but it would take a long time for it all to get up to temperature. This way, it can heat this upper portion quickly and get you hot water in a shorter amount of time, although not the entire tank full. And then this will kick on to heat the rest. Nothing fancy on the top. You've got a cold water in, a hot water out, and there is typically an anode that goes in here. It's a sacrificial anode, and the purpose of that is to rust and corrode before the tank does, to try to extend the life of the tank. But I've actually got two things that I want to repurpose from this. One, I need a new foundry furnace for melting metal. My current furnace is too small, and you can see how big that is by comparison. I'm going to use the sheet metal on this to make a new one, because it's perfect cylinder, it's exactly what I need. And it's just about the right size, so I can handle a much bigger crucible. The other thing is we butcher our own chickens frequently, and I want to make a chicken scalder. What a chicken scalder is basically a water heater that you can dunk a chicken in. This is after you've killed it, and it needs to be about 145 degrees. And it would be great if I could use the electronics in this, the thermostat and the heating elements, to monitor that water. I could just plug it in and have it stay at 145 the whole time we're scalding. So I think that doesn't want to come off because of all the spray foam insulation in it. Not going to give it up easily. It'd be really nice if I could get this off of here, then I could look at the tank intact. Plus that would be more interesting for the video, wouldn't it? Let me work with this thing, I'll see if I can get it apart. So this is just a piece of scrap steel. I sharpened the end. It's not super sharp, but a little bit, so that I can pound it down through and separate that insulation from the case. I hope. Well, that's going to be a workout. It's too much work getting it back out, so I'm going to try a little trick here. So let's see if this works. Yeah, that's a lot easier. Alright, change of plans. In spite of going all the way around it, this thing still will not budge. Maybe insulation is just, it's very sticky too, isn't it? Surprised how nasty that looks. I would have expected it to be cleaner, but I guess it gets condensation on it and it rusts over time. I wonder if rather than cutting it, can I unfold that? I think with a little care I can fold that back together. It's interesting, that's actually the bottom of the pressure vessel, but I don't see any obvious place where it was leaking. All right, one water heater tank. Let's clean up this mess. This gets hooked to 240 volts. In the US, we have 120 volts on each line that are 180 degrees out of phase to make a 240 volt power source. Your two legs come in and they go through, this is just a breaker. Go through the breaker and then come down here. Now, one leg, this 120 volt leg, just gets distributed straight to one side of the heating elements. So it goes straight to the heating element, and this side comes down and goes straight to the other heating element. The other leg is the one that's getting switched. So it goes through the breaker down to the thermostat, and this thermostat is different than this one. This thermostat has a breaker in it. So when it is wanting to heat, the water isn't hot enough, it is normally closed between these two legs. So it's going to take that voltage coming from this one, it's going to put it right here, which is the other side of the heating element, and the heating element's going to come on. It's going to heat up the tank. The thermostat is sitting right here up against the tank. There's insulation on it, so the thermostat just sitting right there is sensing the temperature of this steel. When it gets up to temperature, a relay in here pops. It breaks the connection between these two and makes a connection between these two. So when this one's hot enough, the voltage now goes here, there's no voltage here. So that element turns off. This voltage comes down, goes to the other thermostat. The other thermostat, simpler because it doesn't have to have a relay as far as sending it elsewhere, but it just decides, is it hot enough or not? If the water isn't hot enough, it will have a connection between these two and send the voltage to the heating element. If it is hot enough, then these will be open, there will be no connection and nothing will happen, no current will flow. So here's an obvious question. Why run one heating element at a time? Why not just run both of them? Well, those heating elements are 4,500 watts. At 240 volts, you divide those. That's 18.75 amps. You can install these with a 12 gauge wire, which can handle up to 20 amps. So you want to run a 10 gauge just because you're kind of pushing the limit there. But if you were running both of them at the same time, you would have twice the amperage. You'd be drawing 37.5 amps to one appliance, just to your water heater. There are a lot of homes out there that have a 100 amp service. You would see a significant voltage drop with this thing turning on. It's really not worth it to try to do that. And I would imagine there's probably some safety concerns too. That much wattage going into that water all at one time is probably more likely to have issues with too rapid expansion of the water, getting into a high pressure situation. All the water heaters have a high pressure relief valve because if the water expands as it's getting heated and it doesn't have anywhere to go, then the PSI is going to go up, and so there's a valve there that will open and allow the pressure out so that the tank doesn't explode. 37.5 amps to one appliance is an awful lot to be regularly pulling. When you add in, say you might have a range, you might have air conditioning and an electric dryer, you're going to get over 100 amps with an appliance like that. So a gas water heater is very different. We've got a gas line coming in. It comes to this control valve. I've never worked on one of these, but I'm pretty sure that back behind there going into the tank is the thermostat. So this basically turns the flame on and off. The flame is underneath, and that's the only thing that heats the entire tank. It just heats from the bottom. Of course, there's a lot more BTUs there than one of those electrical heating elements. So then the exhaust gases come up through the center of the tank, and then they get drawn up into a chimney of some kind. And you've got your cold water in, your hot water out, your pressure relief valve. Frequently you'll see these pressure relief valves installed incorrectly. They don't put any, the plumber won't put anything on here. So if you came up here and hit this, it's going to spray hot water right in your face. So This one was done right. They directed the hot water from the pressure relief down to the floor. And I still can't tell where this thing is leaking. So I've got these rubber stoppers. I'm going to stop up all the holes. And I'm just going to wrap a plastic bag around this. And let's put some air in. I can hear it. Oh, it's underneath. Huh. That. I probably want to cut it off about right here. And that will be my chicken scalder. So when your heating element fails, this is what you need to do. Of course, without taking everything else apart. They just thread in. I don't know if it's standard, but this one, 1.5 inch socket is what you needed to get that out of there. I think I'm going to save these. These things still work. My cheapo Harbor Freight grinder was struggling with that, so let's see how it does with it. Noticeably more powerful. All right, the big reveal. Yeah, I still can't see it. So that is the cold water in. It puts the cold water at the bottom of the tank. Interesting, it's perforated, so it doesn't go straight to the bottom, it goes in the last little bit. This is the hot water out. Let me dump this crap out of here. I'm going to get a shop vac and clean up the inside of this tank, and then I'll bring you back. There you go. You can see the heating element there. And right here is the hole. I don't know if you can see that down in there. Now, the inside of these tanks is actually lined. I've read it's glass that they do. I don't know how they do that, but it's definitely just not, it's not raw steel in there. You can see that around the weld, though, whatever it is that was on there has deteriorated, and that's why the tank failed. But like this area here is perfectly smooth, there's no rust. And same with this. The tank is protected from the water from rusting out. Now, that said, they always end up rusting out. And other than that, there's really nothing to these things. It's a couple of electronic parts with the thermostat and the relay, a couple of heating elements, and plumbing fittings. So why don't they make these things out of stainless steel or copper or something? They'd never go bad. They'd last over 100 years instead of 15. But, you know, then they wouldn't be able to sell more water heaters, right? Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching.